Hi, and welcome to day 3 of Redefine 2021, I&E's inaugural keynote conference. We've already gained some great insight from people like Brian Krebs and Janelle Shane. We've heard from I&E's leadership about some big changes ahead, and we've taken a deep dive into your career and what it takes to succeed. Today, in our first interactive panel discussion of the day, we'll hear from some of the industry's top experts about how technical training translates to the real world. And we'll examine what a day in the life of an IT professional really looks like. You may be surprised. If you're familiar with the tech space at all, you no doubt know the name Brian McGann. He made history as the youngest engineer in the world, earning his first CCIE at the age of 20. Brian has been with I&E for almost 2 decades, working with tens of thousands of students to help them on their journey to success. He's intimately familiar with the industry and is a widely respected leader. Brian, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. First, I'd like to welcome everybody for coming today to Redefine 2021. And I'd like to introduce our panel of experts that we're going to be talking to today. First, we have John Hammond, who is a security researcher at Huntress, as well as a cybersecurity instructor, developer, red teamer, and capture the flag enthusiast. John is a former Department of Defense Cyber Training Academy curriculum developer and teacher for the Cyber Threat Emulation course, educating both civilian and military members on offensive Python, PowerShell, and other scripting languages, and the adversarial mindset. He personally developed training material and InfoSec challenges for events such as Pico CTF and Capture the Packet competition at DEF CON US. He's an online YouTube personality showcasing programming tutorials, cybersecurity guides, and Capture the Flag video walkthroughs. John currently holds the following certifications: Security Plus, EJBT, ECPPT, CEH, PCAP, OSWP, OSCP. Next, we have Stephen Reynolds. Stephen is an attorney and partner with Baker McKenzie with a practice that focuses on commercial litigation and data security and privacy law. As a former computer programmer and IT analyst, Stephen who's a lead data scientist with Allegiant PLC, CEO and founder of Health AI Inc., data science fundamentals instructors for General Assembly, and data science for the Odyssey Online. Kristen, thanks for joining us here today. And last but not least, we have Jason Gooley, who's a 2-time CCIE in routing and switching and service provider, and is a very enthusiastic and engaging speaker that focuses on network design. Jason has over 25 years of experience in the industry and currently works in the worldwide enterprise networking sales team at Cisco Systems. Jason is very passionate about helping others in the industry succeed. And in addition to being a public speaker, Jason is a published Cisco Press author, developer of CCIE exams, training, and blogs for learning at Cisco. Jason also organizes and is a member of the program committee board for the Chicago Network Operators Group, SHINOG. And Jason is the founder and host of Metal DevOps, which is a YouTube video show about the intersection of metal music and technology. Jason, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'd like to start off with us just getting a little bit familiar about what we do and letting our audience know what a day in the life looks like as an IT professional. So, John, if we can start with you, tell us what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So for my day job, I work at Huntress. Huntress is a kind of software as a service managed threat detection and response company. I'm under their threat ops department. So it's working with malware. It's analyzing and understanding the techniques, the tradecraft, seeing what hackers do to maintain access, how they can bury and dwell in an environment, and what we can do to get them out. Along with that, alongside that technical work, I kind of do a little bit of marketing and podcasts and webinars and presentations and blog posts and reporters, just trying to do outreach and awareness, education, and training on all that is cybersecurity.
Thanks, John. Kristen, can you tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. So my day job is as a lead data scientist for Allegion PLC, which is a global hardware manufacturer. And my focus, you can kind of split data science into two different fields. One is more decision sciences and analytics, and then the other is more artificial intelligence based. And I focus mainly in the artificial intelligence side of things. So I design artificial intelligence systems that increase efficiency and just help users perform their tasks a little easier and make things easier for the people who are using our systems. So that's kind of what I do for my day job. On the side, I love to teach. I have worked with universities. I'm also a content creator for INE. And so similar to John, just outreach and getting some enthusiasm around what I do in the field that I'm in.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis?
Certainly. So my day job is a technical evangelist, and what that basically means is I get to talk to a lot of customers about some really cool technology. I travel around. Well, I was traveling around. I traveled around all over the place delivering events for customers, and really we're responsible for all the education and training for our field SEs and our partner engineers as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Stephen, can you tell us what you do on a daily basis?
Sure. So I have to say this is my first day of my new law firm. So at Baker McKenzie, I previously was at Ice Miller for over 12 years. But what I hope to do on a day-to-day basis is similar to what I've done at my prior employer, which is mostly helping companies who are facing cyber attacks, helping companies with their legal and regulatory obligations, and just how to get through a cyber attack, a data breach, a ransomware attack, fund transfer fraud, that sort of thing, and how to deal with your legal and other obligations that occur when one happens.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. So as part of the overall theme of our meeting here today, one of the big things that everybody wants to know is, how do I get into this industry as an outsider? So John, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started as a cybersecurity researcher?
Sure thing. So I'll have to add the disclaimer and kind of the asterisk that my path might not be the one size fits all, 1,000% certain, guaranteed pathway for others. I personally really like to learn, and how I got my chops on this stuff was by doing hands-on and practical application-based learning. So personally, I'm a big advocate for Capture the Flag, for cybersecurity training or just computer science challenges that kind of gamify the whole learning process. I love that, and I sing the praises of it. I shout it from the rooftops. I'm a huge enthusiast for Capture the Flag, other war games, and other online resources. When people say that Google is your friend, they really mean it. Everything's out there, so if you just have the determination and grit, you can get smart on whatever you'd like. And I would encourage anyone interested to do just that.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Kristen, how did you get into your industry as a data scientist?
Sure. Well, actually, Stephen and I have been friends for many, many years, and he was the one who suggested I look into a data-related field. And when I started researching it, it seemed like a career path that had a lot of opportunity and also sounded very interesting. So when I decided to go into it, there weren't a lot of online programs available at that time. And so I did go through a master's program at IU, Indiana University in Bloomington, and got a master's of science in data science. And then was hired before I graduated. There weren't a lot of people. There was a lot of demand and not a lot of people at that time. So it was fairly easy for me to transition from school into the industry. But like John said, there are tons of resources on Google. And coming from a non-technical background before I started into my master's program, I spent a ton of time on Google. Stack Overflow is my best friend, and I spent a lot of time on there, and I'm very encouraged by all of the programs that are arising, like the one at INE, that are making more paths into the industry than used to exist.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Jason, how about yourself? How did you get into networking? You've been in this field for quite a long time, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. And I'll do the brief version of it. My best friend's mom was a computer analyst and had stolen a bunch of her books and started teaching me DOS and Windows 3.1 and things of that nature. And then as the years went on, I heard about this thing called Cisco. In 1997, I started getting into CCNA level courses. And in 98, I got my CCNA, then proceeded for my NP in 01 or 2001, I should say. And then eventually in 2013, you know the story, I eventually got my first CCIE in routing and switching. And from that, I got hired on at Cisco within, I passed March 29th. I was working at Cisco July 8th, which was a dream come true for me and something I've always wanted to do. And the role has changed significantly, you know, going from calling on customers and trying to sell equipment to now more using the experience that I have in the industry to teach people and customers and hopefully have them follow along on the path with where we're going on this journey with technology. So it's been an interesting ride, so to speak, over the last 25 years.
Great. Thanks for that, Jason. Stephen, how about yourself? How does one become an attorney for cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I started off after law school doing just mostly litigation, general litigation, products liability litigation. So representing companies when there were fires or explosions or people were hurt in serious accidents. And so it does not seem like a normal path to doing that, to doing data security and privacy law. But I had a tech background, and one of my colleagues suggested I join another attorney at my then firm, Nick Merker, and join him in forming a data security and privacy practice at the firm. We started working together, and I think just back then it was, I can't remember how many years ago, data breaches started happening to our clients and other companies, and we started helping them out. And from there, we just kind of learned experience. I did take some courses, I did some trainings in privacy and information security. And from there, just grew by experience and by working with others in the field.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. So John, back to you. Would you say that your day-to-day job is what you thought you would be doing when you entered your position, or what are some of the surprises that you find in the cybersecurity industry?
Ooh, okay. That's a super good question. So I would love to be just a code monkey, right? I'd love to be the nerd and the geek, kind of just in the basement, working away, tapping on my keyboard, doing all technical work. I think the reality is, and what I've come to find that I do more of, is talking with people and having the conversations about, hey, what are your struggle points in security? What do you think is missing in your security stack, and what could be done to help with that? So when I would maybe showcase some really cool demonstrations, you know, we light off some fireworks, do some like cooking show magic to get them excited about this stuff, to get cybersecurity and offensive, defensive, detection and prevention all in their face. It's much more of a person-to-person conversation than just tech and code and logic and ones and zeros. So maybe that surprised me when, hey, I'm going to be a little bit more in the spotlight, doing much more outreach, doing much more education. But personally, I think that's really fulfilling, because maybe that's where we need to focus. That's where the gap is. We can't keep hitting this thing with a hammer and saying this is a technology problem. Maybe we just should get more people smart on this stuff.
Great. Thanks for that, John. Kristen, how about yourself? What would you say is surprising in your day-to-day industry?
Yeah, well, I have a similar experience to John. So first off, just the amount of training that I do, even during my day job, it's quite a bit. We do have a very small data science department for such a large company. And so in order to get things done around Allegion, we've started to really help people help themselves in the data science space. And because there are so many great cloud tools available and other tools, we can, with a small amount of assistance, we can help people get a lot done, even who are not data scientists. So we end up training a lot of people throughout the company in many different departments. But in addition to that, the other thing that I found surprising was the amount of, kind of, well, we call it machine learning ops, but DevOps is the more familiar term. Machine learning ops is a little more complicated than DevOps. You all the DevOps things, but a few extra things to consider. And there's a lot of it. So what you learn in school or in a lot of programs are around the actual algorithms, but the things that you don't get are the ops side of things. So now you have this great algorithm. How do you make it usable by the people that you're working with or for your end users? And then on the other side of things, feature engineering wasn't something that a lot of people spent time talking about when I was in school. Everything was very focused on the algorithms. And, the thing is, if you put trash data in or you don't put it in the right way, then you're not going to have a very good result. And so I think those are the kind of two technical sides of things that I was surprised about, how important it is to spend time on your data on the front end, and then all the things that have to be done when your algorithm's finished.
Great. Thank you for that, Kristen. Jason, what would you say on a day-to-day basis? What are some of the surprises that you find in your industry for networking?
I think one of the things is when you're going out and calling on customers, I think the biggest thing is to understand that everybody is in a unique situation. And, there are a lot of times as an engineer for a company like Cisco, you go out and you're working with a customer and they might not have something set up properly in their network or whatever it may be from a design perspective. And the truth of the matter is everybody is in the situation that they're in because of some business need. And I think changing our minds from focusing on the technical pounding away on the keyboard to more of the business focused outcomes and how do we help all the folks in the industry along with their business and achieving their goals. That was a huge change for me because, again, we're coming from being technical and kind of sitting in the corner, we're getting fed under a door as an engineer, the typical propeller heads that we get called a lot. But the truth of the matter is trying to really help everybody understand, very much just like John and Kristen said, is helping folks along on the journey so they can get benefits out of technology in the industry as well. That was a huge shift for me.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Stephen, what would you say in terms of the cybercrime industry? What are some of the surprises that you run into on a daily basis?
Sure. I think when I initially got in this area, one of the things that surprised me and kind of piggybacking a little on what John said is that I was really excited to have this technology background and really thought that would help with the practice and helping companies with data breaches and, envision these very sophisticated hackers, coding away to get into these companies' networks. But what I found was usually these hacks were really simple attacks, the result of really attacks on, I think I've used the expression and heard before that, amateurs hack computers and professionals hack people. And that's really what I think the largest and cybersecurity attacks I've seen is attacks directed at people, tricking someone into handing over their credentials or doing something that they shouldn't. And it's really more about people than it is the technology. So not to completely repeat what John said, but I think that was one of the biggest surprises for me.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. John, what would you say are some emerging trends in the cybersecurity industry?
Oh, so there's a lot to unpack there. That's quite a can of worms. Well, hey, we have the obvious conversations that I know Kristen will do a great job of between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Is that the new way? Is that the new progression? Especially because we think about it oftentimes in how we can use this for defense, how we can use these awesome, incredible new technologies for protection. But I maybe play a little bit of devil's advocate there, and I put my adversarial hat on and try to think, hey, what happens when you give a natural language toolkit and you automate social engineering? If you could use machine learning and AI to craft this incredible phishing email that everyone would fall for, okay, what happens when the bad guys start to get smart on that? I think a lot about cloud, right? That's a given. Almost everything is becoming something that we put out online, whether it's on Google servers or Amazon servers or Microsoft servers. I think that's an interesting conversation because we saw in Microsoft Exchange, one of the recent incidents, hey, we've got exploits flying left and right for on-premise software and technology. We think about our own endpoints and we think about our perimeter, but what happens if pretty soon there is no perimeter? Those are things that I kind of think about, and cybercrime and cryptocurrency is absolutely running rampant. That is, I think, another incredible trend that blows my mind. It's absolutely unruly and insane to be trolling on the dark web, like some weird stuff that I do, but seeing the conversations and seeing that mindset for these hackers that might be blowing up Colonial Pipeline or JBS or some of the others that are just all over the news. And it's like, what's the ransomware du jour this week? Those are the big trends for me in my mind.
John, thanks for that. Kristen, how about yourself? What would you say are trends in the data science industry?
Yeah, so cloud definitely, and we've always had a little bit of cloud. And since I've been a data scientist, we've always used the cloud, but it's just getting more pervasive. Everything we do, we used to dev locally and then move things onto a VM, or we just didn't use it as much. But the tools that are developing on the cloud are just spectacular right now, and I love where they're headed. It makes things so easy, and kind of like I said before, we spend a lot of time, instead of building a really expensive data science program, helping others in different departments learn how to help themselves. And so we've developed this kind of citizen data scientist idea, which is another growing trend. And the tools that are available online, with a small amount of coaching and a small amount of mentorship, we can really help people do a lot in the data science and AI space using the cloud. University education, I highly value mine. It's a really great thing, and we still need people with those kinds of educations because they're the ones building these tools that everyone else can use. But most of the people who can actually practice in data science and AI don't need that in order to achieve a lot of success.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Kristen. Jason, what would you say are some emerging trends in the networking industry?
I probably have to say the line between operations and programmability, I guess. We're talking about data, and obviously data analytics is huge as well. So I think what we're starting to see is that we're becoming network developers. We're not just network engineers anymore. We're not developers. We're network developers, and all of that is kind of going in concert with trends like the cloud. Obviously, cybersecurity is top of mind. It's involved in every single pillar that pretty much every major vendor out there does. And I think that you're starting to see that what was a typical network and configuring things manually, I think those are starting to fade out. You'll still need the skill set on how to do all of these things manually, especially if you want to know. I guess the best way I say it is you can automate failure just as fast as you can automate success, right? So as long as you know what's going on underneath that, you could be in good shape. But those are some of the biggest trends going on right now.
Great thing. Thanks for that, Jason. Stephen, how about yourself? What would you say are trends in the legal community for cybersecurity?
Sure. So in terms of the attacks I've seen in the legal work that necessarily follows them, when I first started, it was a lot of hackers getting in, stealing credit card numbers, social security numbers, driver's license numbers. Those were kind of the common cyber attacks. Now it's completely shifted. I think the cynic in me says it's because they already have all the social security numbers, so you really can't steal them again. So now we're seeing more of the ransomware attack, the cyber extortion, and what I'm seeing too is hackers become, I would almost say, and it's a funny word to use when describing criminals, more business savvy. And I'll just give a couple examples. When I first would deal with attacks, sometimes hackers would ransom these companies, and they would demand Bitcoin was $300 a coin back then, and they demand like $20,000. And these are companies that would probably pay a lot more for that data. Or I'd see them also on the other end have these ridiculous ransomware demands for files that really weren't that important to different companies. And now I'm seeing, I think the hackers getting better at pricing, honestly. And I've even seen them, like there are hacker groups that will say, once you pay the ransom for the ransomware demand, I've helped companies do that. They'll say, we'll also provide you with a report on how we got into your network if you pay this additional money to us. So it's really a business is what I'm seeing. The sophistication and kind of the business level, I've seen them almost like use references. So it was very different than when I first started, which was hackers breaking in and stealing stuff. I'd say now it's almost, more like organized crime, business oriented than just people, stealing things and trying to sell it.
Oh, that's really interesting, Stephen. Thanks. John, where would you say are some of the gaps or problems that you see in your industry?
maybe I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but I might switch it up a little bit because I mentioned it. Yeah, it is a portion of a people problem and it's a portion of a technology problem. When it comes to us wanting to better security, when it's us kind of wanting to defend and protect and make things more safe, hinder the hackers and amp up the defenders, we do need to have some technical chops. So those of us that are either in a vendor position or any other spot in the industry, I'd have to think that the onus and the responsibility can fall on us. Maybe it's the vendor, maybe it's the company, but it's the one that's the antivirus provider, the EDR solution. We're the ones that are kind of the boots on the ground doing the work, where the customer or the client or the individual organization entity, they have their job to do. They're busy. They're running around. They've got to make deals. They've got to make the money come in. Truthfully, cybersecurity just falls to the wayside. And I don't know if we'll ever get it right at that top of mind priority. We all say that it will be. We all say that it's going to happen. We know we want to do this, but somehow we still miss the mark. So does it fall on government? Does it fall on the private sector? Does it fall on whatever? Maybe us as vendors, that's what we need to improve on, is making sure that we really make the promise that, hey, we're going to help you get secure, and we really do it. I think that is maybe where the gap is, because we almost have to train ourselves more and more so that our coworkers, our peers, the people that we work with every day, we're smart on this stuff and we can really, really get that security in place.
Great. Thanks, John. Kristen, where would you say are some gaps or problems that you run into in the data science space?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like I mentioned before, there's a real focus on the algorithms, like too much, right? And so a lot of people who I speak to within my company or who are coming in to interview for a position, they're very focused on the algorithms. I used YOLO, this or that for computer vision or Inception, or, there are a million algorithms with a million different names. And for me, I'm really more interested in how well you think through a problem and how well you think about your data. Are you sending in the right data? How might these algorithms handle this data or that data? And so really it's hard to find people who have the focus on the right piece of the problem, because it's really easy, your actual algorithm, because they're already written for you for most of the tools that we use. It's a few lines of code, and it's really not that hard to just test out several and see which one does the best. But thinking through the problem, making sure you have the right input data, that's a bigger piece of the problem. And it's rare when I come across people who really put the focus in the right place in that regard. The other big gap in our industry, like I said earlier, machine learning ops is a really hard one. So a lot of people know how to build a model, and even those who really focus on the right pieces of the problem, like figuring out their feature engineering. Once you get this spectacular model up and running, how do you actually make it usable? How do you get it working with a piece of software? And so it's just very rare to run into anyone who has experience with that piece of the problem as well. And with artificial intelligence especially, that's a really important piece of things. It's easier if you have algorithms that are feeding dashboards. It's pretty easy to implement that, but things that have to work with other existing software are a lot more complicated. So I think those are the two big gaps I see in data science.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Jason, what would you say are some of the problems or gaps that you run into in the networking industry?
So with a focus on education and training, I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with is that folks are human. And going kind of to John's point, there's only so much training somebody can go through sitting down watching a PowerPoint nonstop. And I think connecting on that personal level, doing that one-to-one or one to just a slight amount, maybe 1 to 15 or so it's more interactive, keeping stuff engaging. We want to make this learning fun and exciting, so it's more easily consumable, right? Smaller bite-sized chunks of learning. When you're trying to go through big thick books that are like this and going through all these different technology white papers and things of that nature, nobody really wants to do that. So we want to try to make it easier. I think that's one of the big gaps. I would have to say probably the other gap would be that there's so many things going on at the same time, and there's not a lot of free time, right? I mean, we were all locked inside for the last year, and a lot of folks took advantage of learning new technologies, taking new certifications, which is fascinating and awesome. Some folks even switched their entire career based on that last year, just sitting around, at home, reevaluating themselves and reinventing themselves, or dare I say, redefining themselves. But it's just what I think the gaps are, make sure that you can really get somebody out there to help you with the training, make it more personal. And then I think you'll see that a lot more things will benefit from that trajectory.
Great. Thanks for that, Jason. Stephen, how about yourself? What would you say are some of the gaps in the industry that you run into with your clients?
Sure, I definitely agree with what Jason and John have said about, especially Jason with the human aspect of this. But one item I see, and I'm a little bit tainted because I come in when things have gone wrong usually. I love help companies proactively, but unfortunately, the bulk of my work is after something's gone terribly wrong is when I'm coming in. So what I see is a failure for companies to address things at a systems level. And what I mean by that is it's easy to say, after we've had a cyber incident or a near incident, oh, this human committed an error. They did this wrong instead of what they should have done. And that's why this occurred. That to me is a bad root cause analysis. What I think companies should do instead, or I see kind of piecemeal implementation of information security products and technology, because, we had this happen one day, so we're going to now secure this to deal with that specific threat. And what I would rather organizations do is look at things as a systems problem and things overall in the whole. I think one of the best examples of this, and I work with a lot of clients in the medical space and hospitals and that like, is with Tylenol. I think it was Tylenol, so hopefully I get the right drug. But for years, there were different dosage concentrations for infants Tylenol and children's Tylenol. And people would accidentally, give the wrong dosage out in these. And then what the manufacturer did eventually is make them the exact same dosage for infant Tylenol and children's Tylenol. They could have just said, oh, this person made a mistake every time there was a missed dosage, or said we need to do more training to consumers on what the dosage is for infant versus children's. Instead, they approached it as a systems level and just made a system-wide fix by making them the exact same dosage. And I see the same thing, I think, in the information security space. When a data breach occurs, it's very easy to say someone fell for a phishing attack. They need additional training. Another thing we might want to do is say, why did they fall for this? Did the attackers register a domain that was just one or two letters off of our domain? Could our technology block for that? Or is there some other reason? Does this person just, ignore all training, not just phishing related training? Are they an employee who doesn't do any training at the company? So I think looking at things as a systems problem and not on kind of an individual or kind of piecemeal basis is what I would encourage organizations to do. And the opposite is where I see the big gaps.
Great. Thanks for that, Stephen. John, what would you say for people who want to break into the industry? What would you say the challenges that they're facing today versus when you started in cybersecurity?
Oh, okay. Maybe this will be kind of a soft proposition. I don't know. I don't know a good way to kind of capture this. I think that for some time we knew that we don't have any information out there on what this is and what we do in the industry and how to do this. And then all of a sudden we went to address that problem. And now there is so much and absurd amount of information and knowledge and things that you could grapple with and learn and latch on to further your education and get smart in this. That's not a bad thing. But I'm realizing that sometimes that might be extremely overwhelming. Maybe the number one question I get asked is okay, how do I start, or what can I start with? Or once I've done this thing, what do I move on to next? What is the real pathway? Can you carve this out for me? Because I don't know how to do it myself, because there's just so much out there. Again, not a bad problem to have, but it's interesting in that it makes a new problem where you get a little analysis paralysis, right? My advice on that, if someone that were starting to get into this and they knew and were aware that, hey, this is like drinking from a fire hose right now, pick something, Pick something that you're interested in, something that you think, hey, this looks promising. It could give me a lot of value if I were to work through this course or try this activity and this exercise. Pick it because you think it's fun and it's something that you are interested in and really enjoy. And then maybe once you're through it, once you're down that road, or even if you're halfway through, if you can take the mental sanity check and say, is this what I thought it was? Do I enjoy this? Is this working for me? Maybe you learn differently, whether it's reading or watching someone else do something or doing it yourself with practice. Step out of yourself and, I don't know, take a look in the mirror and say, does this work? And if it doesn't, then go try one of the other many things you could look at and learn if you want to get into this. And I think that works just as well for courses, for classes, for exercises and activities. Be your own sanity check and just do the stuff that you enjoy, but start with something and don't get that analysis paralysis.
Great, John. Thanks for that. Kristen, what would you say people trying to break into the data science industry, where would you recommend that they start in today's industry?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly, I think, a lot easier to get into than it was when I started out. There's so many great resources online. And I think the number one place to start is with your coding skills. Get really good at Python. I would start with Python. There are other coding languages you can use in data science, but especially if you're going into the AI space, Python's the way to go. A lot is moving in that direction as far as I can tell. And for me, when I am interviewing candidates, the most important thing to me is the experience, not necessarily the education. And I love to see people who have just done crazy things. They were bored one day and decided, hey, I'm going to build my own robot vacuum because I don't like the way my Roomba works. So you're going to, they hacked it and stuck a GoPro on it and tried to run a reinforcement learning. And if you go make that, you better give me some royalties. But just like find things that you want to do. Like John said, things you're interested in, or problems you want to solve, and just go do it whenever you can find spare time. And I love to see when people are doing that because it shows me that they're very passionate about getting into the industry and love doing the kind of projects they'd be working on.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Jason, what would you recommend for engineers that want to break into networking today?
Yeah, I would say, between just not only just networking, but also you're talking about automation and programmability and these different pieces
Right.
together. I would say just get started. I mean, that was one of the biggest things. And to John's point and Kirsten's point as well, is that there is a lot of different things out there. You kind of got to find what you like to do, but the best way to do it is just to get started. And I think one of the easiest ways to get started is start getting your hands on it. And what happened before in our time, back in the day, there were only a couple books and things like that. And it was really difficult to get experience with hands-on because you'd have to go buy all this equipment that was very expensive. Now we have all these different virtual platforms where you can virtualize all these routers and switches and firewall devices and things of that nature. So you can get that hands-on. And, similar when we're hiring different candidates and we're going through interview processes, we do look for experience. And obviously we want some education because there's got to be some sort of a bar. And that's why you see certifications becoming so prominent in the industry, not necessarily just college degrees. And that was kind of the path that I went down, right? And I think if you go down that path and you get started and you start looking at these options and gaining experience now, even if it's something small like making a Raspberry Pi into a RetroPie video game system or something like that, it's cheap to get started. It's like $150 and you can have everything you need. Just get started. That's the step into the direction that you want to go in. And if you need to course correct after that to kind of go into another path, like you get down and you're like, well, I don't know if networking's for me. I want to do cybersecurity. Having knowledge in all these different arenas is not going to hurt you because it's
Right.
necessary these days.
Great. Thanks for that, Jason.
Yep.
Stephen, what would you say for people trying to get into cybersecurity? Where would be a great place to start?
Great. Well, I have to agree with what everyone else said. I'll say, Jason, my son and I built a RetroPie with a Raspberry Pi about a year ago. It was a good activity to do. It was good fun. And so I say, like everyone else did, do something interactive. I hear from people a lot of times that have trouble breaking into the privacy or security industry, especially, even after they've, gone on to school or taken some courses and gotten certifications. So I'd recommend, doing an internship if you can. working to get some actual experience, just doing things at home, kind of practicing those sorts of things like everyone else has recommended. I think that's a good way to kind of get some experience, so you that will be carried throughout with you as you start your career.
Great. Thanks for that, Stephen. So, of course, one of the big themes that I want to talk about today is training. So, John, what would you say for comparing current types of training that are offered out there? Where does training end and where does the real world begin? So, where does academia end and where does the real life cybersecurity that you see begin? And what are some of the shortcomings that you've seen with today's trainings?
Ooh, okay. A lot to pack in there.
Right.
So sorry, I feel like I've thought about this a bit and talked with some other folks, because you look at training and certifications and maybe a formal education or whatever the case may be, and sort of different stages of your career, whether you are fresh jumping into the industry, you're totally green, you're new, you consider yourself a beginner, maybe you're looking for a junior role, you just want your foot in the door. I have to think that if you are surveying the training and industry professional certification scene or whatever, sometimes you might find a bucket of training and certifications and education that is very conversational or like high level. You can sort of talk the talk. You might study and cram through a textbook, memorize as much data as you can, and then brain dump it on a multiple choice test. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that has its own place. Personally, I am much more enjoy the hands-on practical application based maybe certification exam or the capstone challenge to prove your merit and your competency. I think that these align sort of in different places. Those talk the talk, high level conversational certifications or other training might get you your foot in the door for that early beginner level role. As you move into maybe an intermediate or a mid-level position and maybe get into some advanced, then you certainly want to be tackling those real world challenges that put you in an actual environment. Even if you get to a senior role or whatever, if you say, hey, I'm good, I'm done, I don't need to climb the ladder any more than I feel like I already have. Personally, I still think training and certifications and industry work, all this education is still good to do so that you can just bolster your own skill set, so that you can get sharper, so that you're not going to end up maybe stagnant and aren't keeping up and learning the new things that maybe you should in the work that you do. So I do that. I still study and work through some training just so I can stretch myself and grow myself. So maybe that transition from that academia and real world is kind of at the cusp of that mid-level to intermediate and advanced stuff.
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Oh, always.
Yes. John, thanks for that. Kristen, what would you say are some of the shortcomings of academia and training, and where training ends today, and the differences you see in the real world and data science?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, what you learn in academia has a place in data science. And I think, a lot of the people who are going through master's programs and PhD programs in academia, especially, there's a huge focus on the algorithms. And those are the people that are going to, Google and AWS and the big cloud platforms and, OpenAI and these companies that are developing a lot of the tools that we're using in the industry. So I don't want to discount what you learn in university. But at the same time, in a lot of corporations, that level of understanding of algorithms isn't necessary. When you're actually implementing the algorithms, the more important thing to think about on a day-to-day basis is the feature engineering. What data is going in, how it's formatted, what to include, what to exclude, and making sure that you've sourced it well and it's being stored well, and you can work with there's this full system that you have to think about, not just the algorithm. And so for me, a lot of training is way too focused on the algorithms. But at this point in data science, we really need to start looking at the system as a whole, and just defaulting to using the tools that are available to us, which allows us to really focus more on the data and the problem and the bigger scope of things. And what I really love about programs like INE, and of course, I'm biased because I'm a content creator for INE, is that when you have someone working at a corporation who's handling some of the hiring decisions, when I'm creating content for INE, I'm thinking about that when I'm creating my content. What do I look for in candidates? What do they need to know to perform well for me? Those are the kinds of things that I try and include in my courses. So I think there are a lot of great programs like INE that are starting to move in that direction.
Great. Thanks for that, Kristen. Jason, how well do you think types of training today is compared to what you see in the real world? And where do you think are some of the gaps in today's training that you run into?
Yeah, that's so it's interesting because there's a couple pieces to that. Like, for example, when you're building training, we kind of need to start looking at the outcomes of what you're trying to get versus the deep dive level of technical difficulty, right? So for example, on that, we had some candidates come in at a previous company, not at Cisco, but that we were interviewing, and they went through a bunch of training online and they took a bunch of courses and they were able to configure a lot of different things. However, there was a gap between getting started and getting to that level, and one of them sat there for almost an hour and a half because they didn't know how to console into a device. And I think that once we structured training to fit whatever outcome, because really customers want something to happen with their network. They're really not buying a network because they want to spend millions of dollars for gear. They're buying it because they want it to do something for them from a business perspective. And I think that, as Simon Sinek says, we start with the why. It very much applies to training and content as well, because real life experience versus what you get through a training class, there might be a discrepancy, or maybe there needs to be little modular pieces to fill in those gaps, right? So I think that's probably some of the things that I'm seeing. You might be able to configure a router really good and do OSPF and everything's just humming perfectly, but you don't know how to get into the physical router in person. If you're in a data center somewhere, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Thanks for that, Jason. Stephen, what would you say in the legal world of cybercrime and cybersecurity? Where is there a lack of training that you would see fix some of the problems that you face in your industry?
Sure. I think to steal a point Jason made earlier is that everyone's in a unique situation. What I see gaps in is when people try to deal in absolutes, like you must implement something this way, you must do it. This is best practices. You have to do it here because that's how we did it at my last organization, or this is how I was trained to do it. And there really is no one size fits all approach to cybersecurity. I like to use, I probably overuse sports analogies, but I always, when a team hires a new coach and that coach is like, we're going to implement this offense, pick whatever team sport, or we're going to implement this defense or this way of running things before they've even met their players, I think it's a mistake. I think you're better off, learning who your personnel is, learning the culture of an organization and what will work and what will not work, and then tailoring your approach to cybersecurity based on your specific organization and your specific threats. So I think, dealing in the theoretical world and understanding, the foundational and security principles is very important to know those, but having the realization that it may not work or may have to be implemented differently for your organization is equally important, but a lot of times not taught in training.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. John, how do you see training, specifically INE's training, is addressing some of the content trends and challenges that you see in cybersecurity?
This is cool because this sets me up for kind of the idea that I had in my head listening to a lot of the other folks. When you present training, when you have a course, when you have a class, when you have some form of education in its super distilled form, oftentimes they want to teach you how to solve a problem or many problems. And if it's presented in the way that it's just teaching you the solution and it's just teaching you the straightforward path to solve that problem, and that's it, you follow this checklist, you do these a matter of steps and tasks, and then it's done. You throw your hands up and you're good. I think that is the wrong model, because the thing that I think the undertone that we've been chatting about for this last question was the more valuable skill is critical thinking and the kind of thorough understanding, so that if you're trying to solve a problem and something goes wrong, then you can kind of work your way around it. You're not going to fall down one rabbit hole, or you maybe know some other trick or technique that might be able to go in this place. I'll go on a tangent if that's totally okay, specifically in the realm of security. And for content creation, the training that I try to offer on my own YouTube channel, we were working through a binary exploitation challenge. So a very low level, very deep in the weeds of assembly code and trying to work through a buffer overflow or return to libc attack, just nerd stuff, geeky stuff. But traditionally people say that this is a hard skill to master or to learn. But I think the issue is that there aren't the right resources that showcase this, because oftentimes if you look at a write-up or you look at articles or a blog on this sort of thing or a video, they'll give you the solution and that's it. But we want to walk this back so that you can see at the big picture, even the granular stuff, like, hey, when something goes wrong, how can we debug this, or how can we troubleshoot this, or what fragments of the reverse engineering process can we harken back to know, oh, maybe X memory address or Y pointer wasn't the right option for us. Can we try something else? I think that critical thinking and maybe a little bit of that stubbornness and determination to keep working through a problem, even if it's not the cookie cutter straightforward answer, that is what we really want in the training that we